Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Tazz, and of course, you are listening to or watching the Intro podcast. Hey, I have a guest on today. I've just started following her on social media, but when I say one of the most effective individuals I have ran into on social media in a long time, because on social media, you will run into some people or learn about some folk, and you be like, why am I following him? Why am I following her? But when I tell you the guys on this truth, it's a breath of fresh air to find somebody who is doing something effective. Let me give you a little bit of information about Miss Joy Pittman, blending her unwavering faith with business entrepreneur. Joy Pittman is now equipping urban ministry leaders with tools to successfully manage their spiritual and business side. How are you today?
I am doing well. How are you?
I am wonderful, man. It is such a pleasure to have you on today's show. As I told you before, and I just explained to the audience, I love the fact that you are as effective as you are in what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot, especially for people that are like coming across and kind of getting an early glimpse or a first glimpse of things, to be like, effective is a good word. So I'm going to take that word. I'm going to take effective.
Yeah. How did you get into this area of entrepreneurship?
I got you. So the pandemic, God is funny. I left my job at the end of 2019 to go into consulting because I was working in HR and corporate spaces and just kind of gotten burned out with the conversation that I wanted to have and the one that I could have, like the two conversations. So I was like, I'm going to go out. And initially I was going to go do consulting for women in leadership and kind of give them that HR lens from the other side, where I wasn't aligned with the organization. I stepped out November of 2019, and then February 2020 being a pandemic. And I was like, wait a minute, right? What happened? Now, many background prior to that, I had launched something called When Faith Meets Strategy. In 2019 in February, I really felt led to really just share some of the business concepts I was learning or I had learned over time with the faith community, as opposed to like complaining about the stuff that I didn't enjoy. As a member of the church, I was like, let me just say from a non-critical place, but from a helpful place, what are some of the areas that we can address? How can we be more mindful about our money? How do we be more mindful about our engagement and how we build community in church, etc.? Not knowing exactly a year later, we would walk into a pandemic and New York had to shut down and all those. I live in an area that got hit, quickly and early because of the city and all the other stuff. So I started building HR for the Culture, which is my HR business. We walked into a blessing in that while the pandemic was happening and the world was shutting down, Black folks were getting more money and e-commerce brands were growing because people were home with extra money shopping.
Yeah.
I started working and supporting e-commerce businesses. We did 6 figures in our first 6 months. We actually hit a combined total of $1 million in revenue in our first 2.5 years, right? And so that was like a big deal, but I had this little nagging thing on my shoulder that was like, what about the faith community?
Yeah.
You thought about the people. And so I kept thinking it was an either or. And what God really began to show me is that it is both, that it is not ministry or marketplace, it's kingdom. And so how are we thinking about the ministry, spiritual side, spiritual guidance, the God stuff, and the marketplace, the bottom line, the accounting, the marketing stuff, to really think about how we thrive and how we advance kingdom. And so I kind of went back into a faith meet strategy with a different vision of building a bridge between ministry and marketplace for kingdom advancement. So essentially, I say business stuff through biblical stories, a biblical lens. So I'm churchy enough that the saints can get with me, but I have enough business acumen that the non-saints can get with me, and it's really building a bridge between the two to advance the kingdom.
I was gonna ask, so like, whenever you decided to go to the church, how, because whenever you play with some people money, or you start talking about money, regardless to if you church or you the secular world or whatever, how did they take your presentation?
So if I can just keep it like a whole buck. So when I first decided to do this, my presentation was terrible. because I was walking in. So this is like maybe 2018, 19. I kind of had a little bit of an arrogance about like, I don't went over here and made this money in my, and that, at that time it was on my career. So I hadn't even started a business yet. I was in a career. I was a decent 6-figure earner. I was building team and doing those kinds of things. So I kind of came over with like y'all ain't want to listen to me before, but now I went over here in the streets and made some money, so y'all gonna come back and listen to me now. And I don't know that my intent was good, but my presentation, I wasn't thinking about my audience and how they needed to receive the information. What I will absolutely say is that entrepreneurship taught me that it's not, you just don't get to say what you want to say. You got to say what you need to say in a way that the audience, your intended target, the people that you're talking to, can receive it. So I had to really sit and think about, how do I present what it is that I'm saying? How do I present this message that I believe is right in a way that is not offensive or doesn't beat people up? So I am me. I'm gonna say the things, but how do I say it in a way where they can embrace and understand it? How do I walk in as a friend to the church and not another critic? Because the church got a lot of critics already, right? But I learned that serving Black women, because similar to the church, Black women got a lot of critics, right? Like our community has a lot of critics. So how do I talk to Black women? And that was where it started. Like, how do I talk to these women that I want to serve in a way that is not beating them up for starting a business, making them feel bad because they don't know how to run their team, making them feel like poor leaders? How do I lean in from an empathetic place and say, I see you and I want to support you? And so that learning how to use that marketing language and identify audience and target and what to say to them really helped when I started rethinking, how do I reapproach and how do I re-talk to the faith community? So I don't really go in talking to them about their money. Don't go in being like, you need to spend your money better. What I do to them is from the place of, your intent is to reach the masses. Your intent is to help the community, to spread the gospel, right? How are we doing that? Where are you on your measure of doing that? And if you're not doing it great, how do we do it better? And in doing it better, I probably am going to have to talk to you about your numbers. And I will have to talk to you about these things, but I don't go in attacking the thing. I go in addressing the fact that we have impact that we want to bring. And so how do we bring that impact in the best way?
Let's talk about how you go about actually talking about the spiritual and business side of things, because, you know, a lot of times people consider, if you're not giving me like straight Bible from Genesis to Revelations, I'm not gonna receive nothing that you say. But just talking to you like this, you a homie. So in being that, how do you cultivate the criteria to presentate, to be like, okay, I understand that you are the church, you do represent God, but just as there's a spiritual side of this, there's a physical side. What's the combination of what your belief is, or how you go in to talk about that?
So the blessing is that I do think that because God has called me to this, he has actually graced me to see biblical or business models in biblical stories. So a lot of what I do is I am unpacking scriptures that you've already read, but I'm pulling out the business concepts in those stories. So you can't really dispute me on this, right? So I'll give an example. One example that we use in team building is the Genesis model, right? Like we talk about the story of Genesis. Jesus or God does not say, let us make man until day 6. So when I'm talking to people from that story, I'm like, you know this story. So we talk about day 1. In day 1, he said, let there be light. All that was illumination. Let me see what's here. Let's identify what's here. So when I'm walking them through it from that perspective, they're like, oh, day 2, he starts saying, let's organize, let's separate the water from the earth, let's separate the light from the darkness. So he illuminates and then he organizes, right? Day 3, he starts producing resources. So when I explain to them, you hiring too early, you bringing people into your vision that you have not clarified and not organized and not structured. I'm not just coming to them with like, you doing it too early. I'm like, what did God do? I don't believe in what would Jesus do. He already did it. So what did Jesus do, right? Let's go back and look. So when I'm bringing it to him from that perspective, I'm saying, so he didn't introduce man into day 6. And when he brought man in day 6, he already had a job description. He said, I want you to multiply, replenish, renew the earth. He already said, let's make man in our image. So he was clear about the type of people that he wanted to bring in, right? And they already had resources there to operate in. He didn't bring them in and say, you change the dark and void. You add animals. He said, no, just replenish and multiply what I've already created. So when I'm talking to them about how to set foundation and vision, I'm talking to you from your Bible. So you can dispute the Bible with me, but if we're looking at the pattern of what God did, so that's one of the ways that like most of our training models, especially in the faith-based space, always has. So Joseph, we talk about Pharaoh having to be courageous enough to have a dream that he could not interpret, and then go get somebody else to interpret the dream. And then set Joseph up, give him the chariot, give him the signet ring. Like, what does that mean around building your leader? So Daniel, so there's all these different models. When I read, I feel like I read the scripture through a business. So like, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. And also, that's a good strategy at the same time. Really helps me talk to my audience in that way.
I love the way God has given you the ability to talk about him in that manner, but be real at the same time, because it gives you the opportunity to, I wouldn't necessarily say cross over, but you can reach people that are in the church who are, you know, I'm in the church, but I'm not all the way there. But when I'm listening to her talk, because she's talking my language, I can believe what she's saying. I think that's so clever. So I done the show last week, and I was talking about going back to what you were saying about hiring people, to where you can hire the right people at the wrong time that can mess up your entire business, ministry, or whatever. And I feel like you can just give me something on the norm. Let's go.
Yeah. So again, using that model, and I don't want to beat the horse to death. A lot of times what I think is happening, what I use the analogy of, is that we are hiring people into darkness and void. So we are bringing people in, we're bringing in day 6 on day 1, and they don't have a framework to even work in. So you got to think about it. You're figuring it out. And what we often do sometimes is like, God gave me a vision, right? I'm just gonna hire somebody into the vision and let them figure it out, because I'm ready to go over here. I'm tired. I don't work hard. It's like, that's not how that works. Yeah. You have to give people a framework to work in. So even when we look at people that build, even we think team in the Bible, even when you think about Pharaoh brought Joseph out. Joseph had the strategy. Joseph had the implementation plan. Pharaoh had the resources. Pharaoh had the authority. Pharaoh established kingdom. So what I think is happening sometimes is that we're bringing people into things we haven't established. What I try to tell people all the time is that when you're hiring people, their job is to replenish and to multiply. So they are either multiplying what you have already set in motion, and they're making it operate more effectively, more efficiently. They're adding speed, they're adding quickness, they're adding efficiency, right, to what you've done. Or they are replenishing, meaning that you have exhausted yourself in a certain area. Now they're coming to build it back in. But bringing people in to build from the ground up in something that you have not clarified is chaos. Yeah. It doesn't work. And so we've brought people in and spent a lot of money and frustrated relationships and burnt people out and left a bad experience for them and us, because we brought them into darkness and void. We brought them into where there was no light. We brought them in before there was any plants or any animals. So they didn't know what to do. They were just walking around doing what they knew to do best. And then you was like, that's not what I want. Well, what do you want? Give me some clarity. Absolutely. Do you know what you want? Right? Yeah. Like, so we got to figure this out.
That was for me. That whole entire spiel, that was for me, because like I told you before, we're getting ready, we're shooting for another elevated part for what we're doing. That whole entire spiel was for me. I needed that this morning. On yesterday, I saw that you post on Instagram that you are a published author. You have a book. Let's talk about the book.
So let me tell you something. God got me and was like, girl, don't get excited. That was to rip you off the plastic book. You got more Right. But what happened was, so in the month of September, I had been struggling with how do I be consistent on social media? How am I consistent on social platforms? How do I keep showing up? And so I am not the person that's going to take you shopping with me. We're not going to get dressed together. I don't put on makeup a lot. So this lip gloss is the most we given, but it's just where we at.
Yeah.
So I was like, how do I be authentically myself? I don't want to, play with my dog on camera. Like, what can I do? Mm-hmm. And so I started going live with just my thoughts. Like, God dropped this in my heart this morning. I was saying God got me together. And I tell people all the time, I don't know about the gentle Jesus that talks to people, but my Jesus is from like the hood. He comes from my neck. So I was like, let me share you what my hood Jesus said to me, because your gentle Jesus is saying in a whisper, he's gathering me, right? So I was like, okay. So I started just going live and sharing, and people were like, oh my God, that helped me. So for the month of September, I was in a conversation with somebody, and she DM'd me and was like, you know what? You should do Count It All Joy and talk about grief. And I was like, not gonna do that, but I'll use the name. I don't want to talk about grief because I've had some losses. I've lost my mom and dad, and so it's just been a lot of like losses in a relatively short amount of time. But I don't want to talk about that, but I like Count It All Joy. And it was like a obvious, right? Yeah. And so it was 30 days of faith and gratitude. We're going to build our faith and be grateful. And what ended up happening was over those 30 days, I realized that like just the getting up every morning and digging into a scripture and reminding ourselves and kind of building ourselves. So while I was in the middle of doing a devotional, she was like, yep, we should do a 30-day devotional. So we did the devotional called Count It All Joy. On the backdrop of this, some of the lessons that God has kind of unpacked for us over the 30 days, and now we're in October, so now we have 50 days now, right? Yeah. Of faith and gratitude. But so he's given me a view of Nehemiah and Joseph and different ones. So those are actually becoming their own books. So we published a devotional. I'm waiting for Amazon to finish approving all the things, but it's in the samples on its way to my house. Yes. So we're good I'll have it up and live. But then I have pretty much almost ready for edit a book called Unlocking Your Joseph, which really talks about how leaders can unlock the hidden talent in their spaces. So we talk a lot about the story of Pharaoh and Joseph, and he got me like thinking, how do we learn Joseph? How do we lose Joseph? And how do we lead Joseph? So Joseph is coming with some trauma because he done been traumatized, he done been betrayed, the wife was wild. So how do we really, as leaders, not just bringing people on our teams to serve what we need, but how are we serving them? Because this is still ministry, right? Yeah. And then how do we loose them and give them room to do what they do? And then how do we lead them effectively? So that's one book. And then 8 Sunday was another book that they're both like literally chapters away from, or 2 chapters away from finished. But it really talks about the 8 different archetypes or personalities we need on our teams. But the one that's going to be ready for click and buy in the next couple of days is Count It All Joy. And it's a 30-day just devotional on really connecting our faith and finding joy in the journey of faith. Because it's not always going to be easy, but our joy is not predicated on the circumstance. It is what we carry inside of us.
My only issue with 30-day, whenever it gets too good, I just go through the whole thing in like a couple of days, and then I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? I guess I just start over, do this all over again.
Well, I am all about a worksheet. I'm all about a thing. So we talk about the lesson, but then it's like, all right, let's get into it. Yeah. All right, let's keep it real, right? Like let's address. So it is really designed to do some self-work. I really believe in like self-reflection and self-work. So you might, if you just go read the devotional, you're gonna get through it. But if you actually take the time to do the prompts, engage the questions, think about the prayer points, be reflective, it should take you the 31 days. If y'all read it real fast, and I may have to do 31 more days, right? So just inspire me to keep writing, but I'm uber excited about this season. My mom published something before she passed. And it felt good to do that too. Yeah. But also I feel like I've been saying things for a long time. And so sitting down and organizing my thoughts and putting them on paper really feels like it makes sense for me. So I'm just excited about this.
Definitely. So we see where you are now and what you're doing. I love to let people see the entire picture. So before you became this, What was Miss Joy doing?
All the random things. Yeah, I love the idea. Like, we see the mountaintop, but people want to know about the climb. Like, what happened?
Yes.
So if I can give it to you in summary, and then you could dig into what you want to ask questions about, if that works. We'll be on here for 6 months if I start trying to walk you through 40 some odd of these years. But I actually grew up where I was born, grew up in the church. So my grandfather was a pastor of a church in Brooklyn. My dad was not churched. My mom was. So I lived in a house where on Saturday we were listening to the Temptations, and on Sunday we were listening to Don't Fall into Temptation. That's where we really lived.
Yes.
And so that was kind of the balance of my life. Went through to school. Nothing was really extravagant about me in school. Went through, started college, did not finish traditionally, so I stopped. Ended up going back. I had a really, so I had a run-in. So this will be my juicy tidbit. In my late teens, early 20s, so 19 to 21-ish area, where I was working in retail. And they were like, if you make these returns on a credit card, you put the money back on your card. So we were basically stealing. We were running credit cards. I got caught running these credit card scams. I got caught. And again, at the age that I was, I did not know certain things. So I didn't know what felony amounts were versus over 5,000. I didn't grow up in these streets. I grew up street adjacent. So I grew up in the hood and the house. So like I was outside, but not really. So I got caught, and then, I heard that you don't snitch. So I didn't tell about who else was involved. So the entire sum of money was my responsibility, and it was over $5,000, which means it was a felony. And so I had to do this process now. My dad was like devastated. My mom was stressed. There was a lot going on at that time. And so I remember my dad being like, your life is like, what you finna do? Like, what you finna do? So my dad came down and advocated for me. God was gracious and kind. My dad offered to pay back all the money and figure out how to pay back all the money. They ended up not going to grand jury. They ended up not filing charges. So I had a sealed record and just had to stay out of trouble for a while. But something about that situation literally scared me straight, because I was not ready. And I gotta be honest with you, I was like, if I end up in jail, I'm gonna have to find the biggest girl in there and just be her friend. Like,
that's me, yes.
Nah, I'ma just, you ain't gotta fight me for it. Whatever you would like. I will make deals for you. I will stir your for you. Like, what do you? So I already made up, but I knew I wasn't for that life, and I was living in a way that wasn't for what my life was. So I stopped being crazy, but I didn't really go back to church. I just stopped doing wild stuff and really just focused on my career, focused on finishing school, focused on doing the things. Somewhere in that path, though, you start hitting certain ebbs and flows of personal success, but it felt empty. And so I've been battling with personal choices. I was having a lot of bad relationship experiences, not making right relationship decisions, not picking the right people for my life. So it's just like this best of times, worst of times, things are good, things are bad. But it was kind of like weird movement of my career was doing well, but my personal life was an absolute shambles. My dad actually passed away in 2009. My sister died the year after. So that kind of shifted my idea around that I would live forever. And it started making me really focused about time and what my time being more intentional. So I did lock down more, I focused more. So that's what kind of fueled the drive to finish school, because my dad died 2 months shy of me graduating. So it was like, if I had just did it on time, if I just so time became a different thing. And so I was kind of like visiting church, but church didn't really feel natural to me because I felt like I was living to people. So I would come to church and be like, yep, I'm gonna clap my hands, I'm gonna do the thing. But I saved all my good ideas for them. So I would come to church and things not working, but I was taking it outside. And so life just kind of, I feel like I spent a decade marking time. Like I had a good resume, but I really didn't feel like I was fulfilling anything. I didn't really feel like I was called to any major purpose. Nothing felt big, like just nothing felt like it was important. And then we walked. So then I decided like, I want to do something that's not mediocre. 2019, I leave my job. 2020, we start HR for the Culture, but then I dug so much into HR for the Culture that in the pandemic that I neglected family, I neglected friends, I neglected all the things. And then the end of 2021, my mom dies. And all I can process is all the time I did not spend with her because I was chasing this bag.
Yeah.
And you start to get to a place of, so it's not just the money and the success. It's not just be a good person. Like, it's got to be something where you know that you're fulfilling life purpose, because I kind of felt like I was just doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 2022, my mom was my grandmother's caregiver. In 2022, my grandmother passes away. What I will actually say is that somewhere between realizing I had no parents and no grandparents and was down a sibling, and one sibling wasn't talking to me, and I got one brother that I'm cool with, my world got very small. And I got very reflective about who it is that I needed to be or wanted to be or desired to be in the world, and what did that look like, and how did it show up, and all those things. And so I feel like much of the first 30-something years of my life was really giving me my tools. But this last 2 or 3 years has been really more intentional about how those tools get utilized. And if I left the world tomorrow, what do I want people to remember? So when you said like your stuff is effective,
yeah,
I also, like, when I want people to think about me, I want them to think that I cared about people, that I served. I wasn't perfect. I got a lot of glitches.
Yeah.
But that I was effective, and that I was intentional and compassionate, and like all those things. And so how that looks, or how I live that out, is in my service. It is in HR for the Culture, and with Fake News Strategist, and these, one-on-one conversations. It's how I try to show up on social media when you're not watching me get dressed, but whatever I do.
Yeah.
Whatever. So I hope that answered the question, and I'll dive into anything else. But I feel like I am really I feel like Michelle Obama, like I'm becoming, but like I'm just at leaving legacy that is not financial only, but what is the life legacy I'm leaving behind?
I think out of everything that you said, my title for that particular comment would be how God can take a flawed person and turn them into the biggest thing ever. Because, a lot of people would, if they were to go through something like that, they would let that situation stop them from becoming. But I am excited that you were able to see that God can take all of this stuff that I was doing that wasn't there for him, and now give me the ability to turn it around. Because see, now you have a blueprint that you can go out and you can teach the right way to do something. So, I mean, sometimes it may take us to do something that's a little to learn a lesson so that we can turn around and we can help a whole bunch of people from having to do that.
And it gives us compassion. I mean, I was sitting in my car yesterday and somebody said something really nice about me. And I got really teary. I should have happened. I was like, I know the depth of I know who I was.
Yeah.
Like, I know the mistakes that I've made. I know the unworthiness I've carried. I know all those things. Even when I came back to church, I didn't come back to church to be a wonder or a star. I was like, God, how can I serve? Yeah. If you just let me back inside. Like, I was prodigal son. Can I just come back over here and wash the dishes? And so for him to be kind enough to say, nope, you ain't got to wash the dishes. I'm going to put you right back where you should have been and align you, and you did not lose all of it, and you didn't lose all my favor and grace. God can do that. And I think sometimes we're presenting the world all these different forms of God. And I think that while God does have a standard, there's a requirement. I did have to align my life. I had to submit. I had to tell him, yes. We need to also sometimes present the God who forgives and forgets. When we are sincere in our sorry, when we're sincere in our repentance, he hears us. And he's willing, and he forgives, and he forgets, and he's mindful of us. And so while we present God as all the things, let's present him as that. He's the God that forgives and really does forget. I
believe that the title of your life should be God is Making Pain Pay.
Yeah, I like it. I'm going to use that. You're going to see that somewhere.
God is making your pain pay.
Hey,
I
yes.
absolutely love it. Where can our listeners or our viewers find out more information about everything you're doing? And please plug in this book again. I need them to get this devotional because I'm going to be on that.
It is Count It All Joy, 30 days of faith, 31 days actually, of faith and gratitude. It'll be live soon, right? So it's Count It All Joy. You can get it on Amazon. If you want to learn about what we're doing, majoritively, you can go to The Joy You Need, right? Like I have two different websites. It's HR for the Culture with Faith and Strategy, but it all comes together on Instagram, Facebook, whatever my tag is at The Joy You Need on those platforms. If you want to know about the faith-based stuff, whenfaithmeetsstrategy.com, and all the information. We have an upcoming event on November 17th and 18th. It's my birthday. I'm on the 17th, so we're going to come on and have a Faith Friday and a Strategy Saturday. So on Friday, we're going to come and let God talk to us and pray and worship and fellowship together. And on Saturday, we're going to lock in and put a blueprint down for how we're going to take 2024 by storm. So I'm excited about that. So those are the things that are there. But go to whenfaithmeetsstrategy.com or follow The Joy You Need on all the platforms. And I'll make sure y'all get all the information y'all want.
Everybody, look, I need a whole nother show just to talk about this making pain pay. I need another show to talk about how God can take the flawed and make broad. I need a whole nother show because you are so much, like there's so much that God has invested in you that the world needs to know. Again, it is my pleasure to be able to speak with you, and I look forward. As I was getting ready, I was like, God, I just want to build a relationship with this lady because
we best friends now. We best friends now. You got to keep me. I'm gonna keep you.
I'm coming to Sunday dinner.
Whenever you want, I will be back to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I believe in good connections in this season. Absolutely. I think God is giving me good connections. So absolutely, I'm here. And thank you for your kind words. And thank you for sharing me with your audience. People don't have to share you with the people that they have credibility with. Right. So thank you so much for sharing me with your audience on this platform.
Absolutely. Everybody, it's your boy Tazz. You are listening to or watching the Intro Podcast. Join with my special guest, my sister. Yeah, I said it, and y'all can't change it. Miss Joy Pittman. I need y'all to follow her on all her social media. Go to her website. I need y'all to buy so many of these devotionals that she have to store it all over again. Inbox a comment on everything that she posts and let her know how effective she is in your life. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of this show on today. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. It's your boy Tazz on the Intro Podcast.